Welcome back, everyone, to Merge Conflicted episode 400.
Hi, James. Thank you for suffering through 400 inane diatribes. Is that a word that I go on from time to tangents? Thank you, sir. I think last time we had a reunion or anniversary, it's none of those things. A memorable show number. You were very nice to me, so I'm just trying to think of nice things to say about you, and I can't think of any. So thank you, James, for doing this show with me. It's been wonderful.
It's my honor, my privilege, and it's fantastic to be on the other side of the mic and the other side of the webcam every single week for so many years and so many bonus podcasts. If you're interested in app updates from Frank Krueger, and if his app is in the App Store, head over to our Patreon, where you can support us after 400 episodes. Patreon.com/mergeconflict.fm. You can find a link in the show notes. And it's a free trial. You just check it out. You can just listen to it. And within the first 30 seconds, you'll know. We're taking a tour down memory lane and cable technology. A lot of people, Frank, they think of the RCA cables. They think of the component cables. They think of the HDMI, the display. They think of the modern stuff. No. The cable I was thinking of was, well, one, with the NES, you got the RF adapter, which is pretty cool. But the ones that are even cooler are the RF adapters that have the TV game switch to antenna one. And these are two little prongs that go into the antenna slot. And I don't know how this magical thing worked, but basically allowed you to, for all intents and purposes, make it so, modern TVs have multiple HDMI like inputs. You switch between them. It basically turns your old TV that had like an antenna port one to have multiple ports. And it's mind-bogglingly amazing.
Okay, boomer. Are we talking about old broadcast TV stuff today? Is that what's going on? Tell me more about your Atari 2600 and Pitfall and all those games. But okay, they are cool. Okay, we're old. We could be old for a second. I played all those. I played every device I had as a kid required one of those adapters. Because TVs had ears or had a little cable jack. You had nothing else. You know what? That's what separated TVs from monitors. Monitors had inputs that you could connect things to, but monitors are more expensive. We had TVs, and so we got those janky RF adapters. And yes, because Dad required to watch cowboy shows at night, it had to have the little switch, so you could switch between Atari 2600 and cowboy TV shows.
Boom. Yeah. And I remember late nights, I had a very old, 13 or 14 inch, diode, whatever. I still might be at my parents' house. Who knows? And playing my NES, my SNES there. And I think for my N64, I needed to actually put it on the normal TV because it didn't have the inputs anymore. There was no way to get that anymore into this old TV. And then obviously I went through the eras. Funny story. You were telling me about your Dreamcast story. I want to get into it. And we do have a lot of questions for our 400. We do these lightning topics, and we're going to do Patreon and Twitter and stuff like that. But I used to work at GameStop for many moons. And there was one time, I forget if it was before I worked at GameStop or maybe after I worked at, no, it was definitely before maybe, or during, we had a promotion that was like trade in any game and get a Dreamcast for $5. And I've only owned Nintendo consoles forever. And I go, I guess I'll buy a Dreamcast because, Dreamcast went from like
$5. Yeah.
They had so many of them just sitting around. So I guess I'll get this Dreamcast and hook it up. And I had Crazy Taxi, Cruis'n USA, and I think like NBA, one of the 2K games or whatever.
It just putting this out there. If you still have Cruis'n USA, I will give you big dollar bills for that.
I don't have anything. I got rid of everything.
Oh no!
I think I was like, ooh, you know what? I can do like wait a year and then I'll trade this in for $20. I think that's what I did. But what an interesting era in gaming. But you recently acquired said Dreamcast?
No, I have had a Dreamcast that I have been nursing along in a sealed box for literally decades at this point. Wow. I have a whole story about why I've been doing this. I'll try not to bore you too much with it, but it's kind of a fun story. But basically, I have had a Dreamcast in a box with the 4 or 5 games I ever could afford to buy. Even
Wow.
like I was even buying my games when they were getting cheap too. So first like the games got cheap and then the console got cheap. And so I'd been keeping around a few games. Shenmue. Anyone out there play Shenmue? Hi
Yeah, Shenmue.
everyone. Shenmue. Yeah. Those great not DVD graphics. um, yeah, so I'd been carrying this thing around, and then a friend was visiting, and I was telling him a joke about how I still have this old Dreamcast, and then we might have had a few drinks, and we decided I wonder if that we can get the Dreamcast working again, and so went through a whole fun modern experience of trying to get an old piece of hardware working on modern TVs and all that kind of stuff. It was fun.
Yeah, it couldn't have been that bad because, well, okay, my TV, I guess it is a pretty old plasma. They don't even sell plasmas anymore, but can I even recycle a plasma? I think I gotta pay a lot of money to
I think
dispose of
you
this puppy.
pay.
I
Yeah.
think I pay. So this one is when I first moved to Seattle. So that
Mm,
was 13 years ago. And I
wow.
mean,
Yeah.
the blacks are so
Oh.
deep on this plasma. How deep are the blacks? They are 0.00000 deep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I've repaired it twice. I actually bought parts
Oh,
off the internet to repair them and to repair it in general. So the first one was the screws got a little untightened in the back that were kind of like making connections. So it would hum if I think the
oh,
blacks
that's
got too
annoying.
black. So
Yeah.
I opened it up, re-screwed everything in, it went away. The other one is one of the panels, because there's strips basically that go across
Okay.
and the light goes across or whatever. But basically one of the
Got it.
panels that went bad. And I think we talked about on the podcast. I got one of the, what are the things that detects the electricity pulses?
An oscilloscope or a multimeter?
I got one of those multimeters, and I was like,
Yes.
okay, what's there? Now my TV though has RCA component in. It's got
Right.
the
Yep. Yep. Yep.
HDMI's. It's got the ARCs. It's got all the things. It got the latest technology, people. So when I brought out my Nintendo Wii and I have the component
Mm-hmm.
cables, I get the crispest HD 480p signal that anyone's seen on
Tight.
this. Those
That's
those
tight.
those blacks, almost black.
Yeah, it really depends on
So
the palette. I don't think they ever actually put black, like true
no,
black in the palette.
no,
But anyway,
no,
please
no,
keep going.
yeah. So for me, I have had like no issues because everything is pretty good in my world. So that's why I was like, when you told me, like, I'm pretty sure Dreamcast had, and that's the Xbox era, so it had to have had RCA and component cable out. Why couldn't you just hook it up?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what was offered with the machine. What I had was composite out. So the yellow coaxial connector, that's
Yeah.
what we use in the United States at least. Right. So that's your color channel and your brightness channel muxed
Mm-hmm.
together onto one signal. It's almost like a broadcast signal, really close to a broadcast signal.
Yeah.
So that's your composite connector. I was all excited. I had my yellow connector in my hand. Funnily enough, I do have a plasma TV in the other room and I could have jammed it in there, but my living room TV, I want to hook my Dreamcast up to the living room TV. That's where game consoles go, living room TV. Go back to the back of the TV, HDMI, 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 coax, and not the right kind of coax.
Oh, weird.
Like, oh, so I bought my TV, either I got the cheap model that didn't have many inputs, or I bought it at that weird time when everyone thought everything was just going to be HDMI forever, which pretty much everything is these days. But it was funny because I really was used to TVs with, monitors basically with 8 billion different kinds of inputs on them. So nope, I'm holding my little yellow cable, and there's let alone the red and white cables for the audio. There were no
Yeah.
audio inputs either. Yeah. So what is one to do at this point?
I guess you could have went online and got a coaxial RF adapter,
No,
possibly.
man, I have a house guest. We are trying to play
Oh,
some Dreamcast right now. You know, the real question is any soldering going to be involved? Okay, so that's.
what did you do? What did you do?
Well, honestly, I thought I was going to go find your beloved RF adapter.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty sure the TV did have the cable TV/antenna connector, the
Yeah.
screw-in coaxial connector. And those RF adapters from the 1980s, I'm pretty sure TVs can still accept an analog signal through that port. And so honestly, I was digging through boxes. How many boxes of cables do you have? I still have a lot. Too
I
many.
triage my 2 boxes every year, and I purge them. And yet every year they seem to be full every time I open them. I don't understand.
Heavier every time, every
Yeah.
time. um, well, this is terrible because every year I say I need to get rid of more cables. But have you ever like opened a box and saw exactly the right cable? It was like there was a sign from the heavens that like for once I could find a cable that I was looking for. This has never happened to me in
Oh,
my life. It was just I was like I should go buy some lottery tickets. This is my day.
wow.
It felt good. What I didn't find that RF adapter because God, who has those? I certainly didn't have any more. What I found was even better: a composite to USB converter, a digitizer, an
What?
external digitizer.
Wow.
Oh yeah, capture cards, 480p capture cards. I remember I bought these for my drones
Ah.
because uh, if you're cheap like me and you get a standard definition drone video transmitter, it's standard definition broadcast, usually basically broadcast TV style, different
Hmm.
frequencies often, but same signal essentially. And so you can get a little receiver that's basically like the old broadcast receiver in your TV,
Yeah.
but it's a little box. From that box, you plug it into a digitizer to get it into a computer. So I
Ah.
could, on my computer, monitor my drone via a
A capture card.
wireless
It's like a
a
capture
converter.
card.
Two
Yeah.
levels of capture. Yep.
Wow.
So I had that puppy. Uh, it's funny. It's USB A. I had my laptop. Laptops don't have USB A anymore.
How many
So
dongles
many
did you
dongles.
use?
So plug, go find the stupid USB-C dongle, plug the USB-A into the USB-C, plug that into the computer, plug the HDMI cable back into the TV, complete the circuit,
Wow.
and get
Full 270.
perfection. I'm pretty sure it's 480. I'm pretty sure that digitizer does the deinterlacing because that's a risk.
Yeah.
You actually named a real possible risk there. You might get the interlaced frames, not the full
Yeah.
complete frame.
Listen,
You know what
you don't want
Oh,
the 1080i. If you got the 1080i, garbage signal, 1080p only. I don't know what the P stands for, but I don't want it. I do want it. I don't want the I. I don't want the interlace. I want the progressive scan, progressive insurance.
okay, but that's not the worst. This is too hard for you to guess, but I want you to attempt to guess. There is a there's a real problem in this setup, and I want you to just try to guess. There is and I'll even give you a hint. It's at the
It's a
top of the frame.
well, the question is, does it downsample? Is it downsampling it
Mm-mm,
into
mm-mm.
no? Okay,
It's a good capture card. One
okay.
could say the problem is because it's too good of a capture card.
Is it then scaling oddly, like down or up? I mean,
Capture
is it
cards are pretty
stretching?
faithful. You get a decent
Okay.
capture card. You're good. You're good. You're getting the
Uh,
480p signal.
I don't know then.
The American closed caption line is the very first scan line on a TV signal.
Oh.
It is a little digital signal. And if you have a monitor hooked up to broadcast TV, or if you have a poorly copied DVD and it shows you every single scan line, you will see at the very top a blinky black and white pattern, a digital pattern.
Yeah.
That is the closed caption encoding. It's encoded as the very first scan line.
Hmm.
TVs get away with this because TVs are terrible. Cathode ray tubes lop off the first five-ish scan lines usually. I mean, depending if you had like a good Trinitron, they would lop off only a couple. But most of them were terrible. And so you would never physically see that top closed captioning line. But and the Dreamcast, being a very good device, of course, encodes the closed captioning line. Good people, because this is pre DVD, but it was still video CD days,
Mm-hmm.
and good rips on video CD had closed captioning, so they were faithful. They supported it.
Good device is a good device. Unfortunate device. I mean, obviously the controller I think was co-developed by Microsoft and some of the stuff. It like ran a Windows
CE,
CE.
the best part of the Dreamcast is on the front. There's a little Windows CE logo
Yeah,
on it. It's the
yeah,
cutest thing on the planet.
that's so good.
It is.
It's fascinating. So my entire lineage was always Nintendo consoles. So I had every Nintendo console. I did buy a used PlayStation 2 only to play Dance Dance Revolution, which I have behind a map behind me for my Wii, which I play now.
Great.
And I then always had every Nintendo console ever. And I did own an Xbox and a 360 and a One and X and all the things. But I was never really a PlayStation person, but I've always owned every Nintendo handheld, every Nintendo console ever.
Yep.
Always there. I never got into Sega consoles because, you know, back in the day, it was really a Nintendo versus Sega thing. So I was team Nintendo. I just was my life. Still am. Got a, you know, Switches around me right now, which is good. Which leads us, Frank, into our first question.
Only 15 minutes in. Perfect.
It's atypical. It's a celebration, people.
We're having fun.
So the question is, any new portable, Jerry Ross asks, any new portable consoles, handhelds to try out? We talk about portable stuff all the time. I've talked about a bunch of little different devices that I've tried out here. Emulation, little consoles become very popular. They've advanced a lot. Obviously, the Nintendo Switch, you know, kickstarted. There's always been handhelds. Nintendo's had Game Boy Advance, you know, Color. They had the DS, all these things. They've been handheld forever, and so did, you know, Sega and Sony and all these things. So handhelds
Don't forget the Jaguar. Yeah.
Don't forget the Jaguar, the Atari Lynx. Just saying.
Exactly.
Okay, so things to check out. Retroid released the Pocket 4, which is pretty good. Pretty cool. The Aya Neo, they have a Flip, which actually is a flip console, kind of like a Nintendo DS. It can actually emulate Nintendo DS and Wii U games, which is kind of cool with the dual screen. You know, I'll tell you this much. I personally think the little handhelds are super cool. I just really haven't had the time or effort or energy. Like, I've spent more time setting them up and getting all my games set up on them than actually playing any of the games.
Yeah.
I
would see it as like a morning device. Like, I woke up, but I don't want to get up. I'm just going to play in bed.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask the Flip one. So 2 screens, huh? How much does that puppy cost?
That one has 2 screens. That's a good question. The Aya Neo Flip DS. What's a good? Let's see what it's.
And also, while you're looking that up, not to make every episode about the Vision Pro, but I must try it. Every episode's got to be about the Vision Pro and machine learning. God, emulators would be so cool on there. I wish Apple allowed emulators. Oh, it'd be so wonderful. It would be an amazing, like, you could set up arcades of games, literal arcades.
Yeah, these Aya Neos are pretty expensive. You're looking at like $700.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you know, these little consoles they go up and down because the Steam Deck, right, really kind of brought things forward. So you want the power, right, the full-fledged one. The Miu Mini is Miu Mini Plus, are really small, tiny ones, very, very popular to check out. You know, I would tell people to go to Retro Game Cores, Retro Game Corps, like the military corps.
It's
Cores.
Just core.
Corpse.
No P and no S, just core. COR.
Russ, who used to be in the military, good guy, friend of the show. There, I would say the ones that I haven't seen a lot of recently that mostly sparked my interest were the tiny itty bitty ones. There's like tiny itty keychain size ones. They're so cool.
Oh, I had a Tamagotchi. They're not that great.
Oh, they're definitely amazing. So I don't know. You know, I haven't really been too into them recently. That being said, you know, I will say that the PlayStation Portal is interesting. It's not a handheld, but basically, if you have a PlayStation 5, it's a dedicated streaming device to stream your games over the internet or Wi-Fi directly here. This is kind of the Wii U dream, but it just didn't have the same versatility. And I think the cool part about it is they strapped 2 of the, basically they took the controller and they chopped it in half and they put it on the side. So it's like an 8-inch screen. So it's really cool, but you have to have a PlayStation, obviously. There is a Logitech G Cloud, which has been around for a while, but there's these streaming devices that basically will hook up to your computer and stream games to them. They're interesting, but I'm still like, again, not 100% sold on the fact that like you need one probably, or you'll spend the time. Like, I do love retro games. I just haven't found the time for them. But the Retroid, I think, is the the classic will do everything for you, runs on Android, has a really great operating system, skin customization, does a lot of, takes care of a lot of the hard stuff that is manual. So the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro or 4 or whatever, those are solid. That's what I would say.
I'm going to make some gross generalizations here for a moment. Please
Cool.
excuse me, everyone. But I assume if you're buying one of these devices, you kind of have a game in mind. Unless you're like a game historian and you're trying to be like a completist, like I've played literally every video game ever created by humankind. Cool. But you probably have like a game from your childhood that you probably are trying to play on this thing. So just get the best one for that game. Don't worry about all the other features and that kind of stuff. I was thinking about that even with the Dreamcast. I believe the actual reason the Dreamcast failed as a product is because the Sonic game they shipped with it is horrendous.
Sonic Adventures?
It's terrible. It's the worst game I've ever played in my whole life.
You're just downhill skiing the entire time. Come on.
I can't even get past the first level because I refuse to figure out the controls. It's one of those early 3D games that they were still figuring out the camera controls and the motion of the character controls, and it is the worst game ever created. I will stand on that. If they had just released a 2D Sonic, the Dreamcast would have worked out.
Okay. All right. Well, before we get all of the hate mail in the entire world, let's head over to our Patreon and let's see. We asked our Patreon members, thank you for being members. What are your questions? We got a few questions coming in. The first one from John Segara says, Frank, didn't care about me, by the way. Frank,
nice.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thanks, John.
Have you switched to VS Code on Mac? Are you still using VS for Mac? Using Writer? Something different? What's the scoop? Or have you moved to a different operating system?
No, I still on the Mac, James. You're not gonna take my Mac away just yet. I'm trying to switch over to Vision OS, right? That's where I want to live. I do everything in VS Code except Xamarin development. I do that now in Writer. I've switched over to Writer for all of that. Sadly, VS Mac, untimely death. So we all had to pick something. VS Code has pros and cons. I love VS Code. I don't want to say anything bad about it because I certainly use it all day, every day. I love it. But it's not an IDE. And I find Writer is still better than VS Code. Definitely for Xamarin, mostly because VS Code doesn't support Xamarin very well or at all. So like you get debugging features, you get everything that you expect out of a proper IDE when you do that. That said, when everything is switched over to .NET 8 now, the debugger will light up in VS Code. So it's a good question because we'll have to ask it again in a year. But right now, at this moment, like my Mac and iOS apps, I use Writer for mostly.
There you go. Yeah, we'll ask it. I was at 450, which would be about a year.
Yeah.
On my end, I do have some Xamarin Mac still. Xamarin Mac apps, the My Stream Timer, although I do need to convert it to Maui, and that would solve a lot of problems. But maybe I just won't. Maybe I won't. But I can still use Visual Studio for Mac to do that if I wanted to. I have uninstalled everything, so I think it would force me to move things to Mac because I don't have it anymore. Else for all of my, I would say this, even though I have a Mac, I would still say the majority of my development is always on Windows. So I've always just been a Windows person. In fact, even when I was at Xamarin with a Mac and only a Mac is my main thing, I often would be in VMware Parallels, to be honest with you. So I would say for me, and what I've talked to a lot of people is like they just use Parallels and just use full Visual Studio on their Mac as a great option, and that does work.
It's tempting. Fusion, I use VMware Fusion. Continues to be good software.
Yeah,
and I have a Windows 11 image that's almost always running in the background. I just find that VMware Fusion, great product, but there's always some small keyboard thing. There's always something, and so I still kind of prefer the native Mac apps for of it. But it's good to know that Visual Studio is always sitting like literally a swipe away. I can get to it.
Totally true. Yeah, and I think I think it's a nice option that's out there. And I think it's gotten a lot better, obviously, because of Windows ARM and Visual Studio ARM builds and things like that have gotten so much better. So the M support is like much, much better that's out there
Yeah.
today, which is nice.
And I should say, I'm using VS Code for definitely all my like .NET 8 stuff, like libraries and test projects and all that, because I do think VS Code's an excellent editor,
Yeah.
especially with Copilot and everything lit up. Oh, and if you get the C Sharp, like the unit testing and all that has come a really long way. So
Yeah.
it's actually a pretty nice unit testing environment, I found.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how it goes going forward. But I think that is the nice part. It's like anything, right? There's a lot of different IDEs, a lot of code editors, things out there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, use what makes you happy. Very nice. Very cool. All right. So next question from Patreon. Dave asks, I'm in a corporate setting and we have a mix of .NET Framework, I like
Ooh.
that, and .NET 6 apps. We're having conversations about keeping some on Framework for now, since technically if we update it to .NET 6, which
Yeah.
end of life's in November, or even 8, we'd have to turn around and update again sooner than just leaving things on .NET Framework for 8. From my understanding, .NET Framework will be supported as long as Windows 10 or 11. Am I
Yeah.
wrong in thinking this? And what should I do for my entire company? Frank and James, you are experts in running businesses.
Well, let me give my not Microsoft, my outsider's perspective on all this. Me personally, I would try to get off a framework as soon as it's convenient. I wouldn't rush, I wouldn't trip over yourself to do it, but I would try to get off of it. But you are absolutely right, as far as I understand. There are certain versions of .NET that ship with Windows, not all versions, and the ones that actually ship with Windows tend to have the same um, update cycle as Windows. You're getting fresh service releases and bug fixes and security flaw. That's what you really want, are the security fixes, because like if the thing does what you need it to do, you don't need to upgrade it. So what you really want are the security patches and things like that. But as a library developer, also please get off of 4.8. Please get onto real.net. And I would 6 is going to be around for a long time. I think even longer than 4.8. And once you're on 6, going to 8 is easy, like because they got good at the backwards compatibility after 5.6. So
Yeah.
once you get up to 6, you're kind of in really good shape. Things don't really break after that.
Yeah. Fascinating. Listen, I think that everyone should try to move to .NET 8. It's an LTS release. You might as well just go for it. Why go to 6, which is an
Yeah.
LTS release, when you just go to 8 if you're going to make the move there? You should really move all your 6 apps to 8 already. In fact, I would encourage actually just going with every single release. I think that, folks, here's my general opinion, James Montemagno opinion, is you should upgrade every single version of .NET all the time. You should move from LTS to STS to LTS, everything here. Just keep moving. It'll make your life so much easier. And honestly, it probably will simplify the amount of time invested if you just take some time to do that. Just like if you were moving from .NET Framework 4.8.1 to 4.8.2, like if you just keep moving with it, just keep it moving, keep going. Now, that being said, if you are moving any frameworks projects, just go directly to 8. Like just do that because it's just came out and it's supported and you're totally good to go. You should just do that. So skip everything else. It doesn't matter anymore. Now, if you are correct, basically .NET Framework is supported for as long as it ships with Windows, basically, which is probably forever because it's definitely in there, right?
Windows isn't going anywhere. Yeah.
Not going anywhere. So you're totally good. Now, that being said, do I think that you should move your apps off of Framework? Well, I know it depends on your app. If your app is just kind of in maintenance mode, you're just fixing bugs and you're not really, maybe not even fixing bugs, and like it's just an app that just does its thing and continues to work, and you don't really care about necessarily maybe modernizing the UI, or you don't necessarily need new HD DPI, high density settings if you're using WinForms or WPF, or you don't need new features, or your library is okay, and you're not using if all of your dependencies are still getting updated with security things, you're probably fine. Just leave it there. It's totally fine. It never hurt anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally fine. You're totally fine. Now, if you are working on apps that would like to take advantage of those modern features, and you want that long-term support and you want security and their core fundamentals, yeah, you should probably look at moving those things forward to .NET 8 there. I mean, all of your favorite libraries and all of your frameworks support them. So WinForms, WPF, console applications, like that stuff moves over. And at this point, I mean, I got to say, like, if you were moving between framework and like .NET Core 1 or 2.1, like probably the API service is pretty different. But then I also have to imagine at this point, the API services that are different, you, depending on your app, you might run into some things, but I also feel like there's workarounds for anything that maybe you're running
Pretty
into,
much
like
everything. Yeah.
app domains.
Yep. Olay, ActiveX. If you're doing any COM stuff in Windows, I honestly can't even tell you .NET 8's COM support. I'm sure they have some, but I can't even tell you how well it works.
Yeah. So, and is on the .NET website. You can go to the .NET website and there's support policy. Just Google it and you'll see all the latest things and the support policy for everything that's on there. Yeah, basically .NET framework, follows the lifecycle policy of the underlying Windows OS. So that would be the same there. So whatever the lifecycle policy is there. So is that. So, I mean, that's my opinion. I'm a fan of moving when it's the right time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, or when apps are just okay. And if they're not broken and there's no chance of them being broken, like they'll continue to run, probably okay.
Yeah.
Controversial.
I mean, even without the security updates, 6 is going to run just fine for probably the next 10 years, to be quite honest. But we don't talk about that. You're supposed to upgrade. Can I just be... there's one problem with this upgrade idea. And maybe you can bring this back to the higher ups who plan out these schedules and everything, James. Just a little thought experiment here. You as a developer, how many times do you file a new project in a year? Me? I don't know. Maybe a couple times a month, maybe 20 times, 30 times. I do file a new in a year. How many years have I been programming? Oh, I don't know, 20, 30 years. So, we can just start doing some math and you can easily get into the hundreds and hundreds of projects that now I have to upgrade every year. No, that's not going to happen. So I do have this kind of raw fundamental problem with this upgrade culture. I don't think it's correct. I think when our industry gets more advanced and wiser, we'll stop it with this rat race. But for now, you got to join the rat race and update your 500 apps every year.
I think it just, I don't know. I think it depends. Every app is different, right? And it's obviously very different if you have an app that is a single project versus 10 projects versus 100 projects, right? Those apps are all fundamentally different, have different, different things that are, will cause different time, different testing. Every app has different complexity, right? Obviously, an app that shows a single screen, a number on the screen has a very different implication versus financial software that like runs the world. You know what I mean? Like there's different things there. That being said, if you look at some of the, customer stories on the .NET website of even internal Microsoft, you see like the Teams application and the Bing team upgrading every single year and getting huge performance hits. And like, they are huge applications, right? And I think that's kind of a cool story. It's like if some of the applications that have the most users in the entire world can update every single year, that. Now, I'm not saying that the engineering teams also are the same size of what you have in your company, but I'm just saying it's possible. But that's totally right. And again, I don't want to be, you update when it makes sense for you and your company and yourself. Because like I've said, like, while I have upgraded some of my applications that on Maui, I haven't upgraded all my applications. And maybe I never will, because maybe those apps are just fine as is. And I never need another update again. Or maybe I don't need to take advantage of the new stuff. Or because I can keep shipping it until I can. Until I can't, then I'm okay. So it's just like anything. It's kind of like when we tell people, oh, should I use Flutter or .NET MAUI or React Native, or should I use Native, or should I do this? every app is different. Every use case is different. Every requirement's different. So, but I am encouraging people, I would
Yes.
say, if you can move with the cheese, move with the cheese. Because when I was a Xamarin developer, still am, we would just update. We were updating everything. We'd always get the
Yeah.
latest bits and pieces every single year. You could not, right?
Dailies.
Yeah. So it just
Yeah.
really depends. I feel like things are so stable now that actually moving between 6, 7, and 8, it's probably not that big of a deal. In general, right? Now, if you want to take some of the new, like for example, let's say you're a Blazor application. You're like, I was on 6, now I'm at 7, now I'm at 8. Your application won't work exactly the same. Now, if you want to take some of the advantage of the new features, like having mixed render modes where some of it's WebAssembly and some of it's server, well, then you got to do some actual work there, right? And that's like implementing a new feature. But if you're just taking your app and moving it forward, ideally minimal changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found that in practice too, that to be true.
Yeah.
Hopefully they just won't add random things to the global namespace like they did in the past.
There you go. All right. Here's some quick lightning round questions coming in from John Galloway. When are the cloned woolly mammoths coming back? And can the two of you do something to speed that up?
Oh, that's a good one.
Soon? They look woolly and fuzzy and cuddly.
Do they? Were there some test subjects? Do we have some beta
I don't know.
mammoths?
Alpha
mammoths?
I am watching. I'll give you a TV show recommendation that was recently added to Netflix, which is Resident Alien, which has one of my favorite actors, Alan Tudyk.
Yep. Oh, yeah. He acts funny because he does act funny.
Pretty good show. I'm enjoying it. There's 2 seasons at least. Big fan because he was on Firefly with Nathan Fillion. Also huge Nathan Fillion fan.
I just saw that the other day.
So good. All right. Quick from Jerry Ross. Any updates on Frank's?
Answers, James. Are you helping the mammoths or not? No?
I mean, I'm pro mammoth.
Tell me how John and I will help mammoths. Yes. They deserve to live.
I'm pro. Any updates on Frank's home automation project?
Oh, yes. It's in a worse state than it's ever been. I think I complained about it on the episode a few months back. I did implement James. James had very wise, very sage device. I'm like, James, yeah. I'm like, James, I am overloading the server. I am asking it to do way too much in a single request. And James had the brilliant idea. Had you considered increasing your timeouts? And so I did that. I increased my timeouts, and it worked again for another 2 months, and then it stopped working again. So I can either increase my timeouts again, or I am going to have a proper Twitch episode to do my thermostats. Now, those are my thermostats.
Yeah.
I have to say, the rest of my house is amazing. The big project that I did where I replaced all the light switches, that was the pro move. The light bulb game was getting to be too much. Now that I have full control of everything, works out beautifully. Some things turn on at dusk, some things turn off at midnight. I love it all. It's worked out really well. So everything but the thermostats, I would say.
I love that. I've gone very far into the Zigbee world and things are going really well. I agree. I'm on the light switch game and not the light bulb game. It is the pro moves. And I do think that it just saves you money in the long run in general. Now, I do think that there are some instances where the light bulb makes sense, which is when you want different colors. So usually having one of those around is good to have, but there are a lot of light switches that can do dimmer. So if you just want the dimmer aspect of it, you can do that as well. So,
and also buy the right light bulb.
Yes, that
you
is
gotta be
correct.
Careful.
Yes. All right, here we go. Danny asked 10 questions. Here we go. Yes
Love
or
you,
no?
Danny.
Are we any closer to fully driving cars?
Yes.
Yeah, we're closer. Yeah. All right. Number 2. What has WASM unlocked for developers? Are we starting to see things on the web that weren't previously possible?
Oh yeah. I was just looking to run a physics engine, the Bullet physics engine. And the current best way to run the Bullet physics engine on the web browser is WASM. And so I would say it's been a real wonder for bringing all the basically old software, all the classic old 80s and 90s software that we all love and rely on every day, bringing all that to the web. I think WASM has knocked things out of the park.
And it plays Doom. Number 3, are we starting to reach a point of diminishing returns on battery technology?
No.
Boom. Okay, done. That's it. You just get one answer,
Okay.
Frank. No. 4, Frank has an Apple developer. Why am I not an Apple developer as well? Okay. This is specific. This is around you. Okay.
Stigma.
It says Frank has been an Apple app developer for 16 years. All right. He's longer than me. I'm at like 12. Yeah. Is Apple's walled garden, no side loading, app review, lockdown app store, a net benefit for users overall? Or is Android's approach better for users and developers?
Does Android have a better approach? I don't feel like Android has a better approach.
They're all bad.
So to answer that part of the question, no, Android's no better. I don't see any. There's no like store incentive for me to go onto Android. I don't find that process any better. No. Is the walled garden good for users? Deep down in my heart, I'm going to answer truthfully and say no. I think there are benefits, but in a lot of ways, I remember the 90s, everyone. I remember how many viruses used to go around. I do, I swear. But I don't think these lockdown stores have like made the state of the art any better than it could have been. I guess I am a evil American capitalist, and I believe in an open market.
I believe in an open market. I think for me, what's important is that there is a standard, safe, approachable way, standardized, that enables me to release software with minimal efforts. And I think that these app stores, which have then come to Mac and to Windows, and to every device standardization, to me has been positive. I know it's been positive. To me, it's great because I used to work when I worked at Canon. Like we had our big, Wix installer and all these crazy things and all this stuff, right? And to release any software and stuff like that. And you've done it. You've done the Gumroad, Gumshoe thingy.
Yep.
And I think on Mac and Windows, like you have the approach of you can go either route, right? And as a developer, I like that option. And for me, I'm always just going to go in the App Store because for me, distribution, ease of release, everything, updates, I like that being handled for me as an independent developer. And I also think that the benefits and the user experience is net positive for users.
Okay. Well, that's the distinguishing factor. Like as a developer, I ship on the store. Yeah. I prefer to ship on a store rather than another thing because tons of benefits there. Notably search, advertisement, they link you. But from the users, if I'm thinking of like an alternate universe where we didn't go down this path, and instead Atari allowed any third-party manufacturer to build their own cartridges. This all started with Atari. I still blame Atari for all of this. If anyone could have made their own cartridges and just sold their own cartridges, it would be a fundamentally different computing landscape these days. And better, worse, I'm going to go with slightly better.
All right. Number 5. Danny said he can Google it, but I would love to hear Frank's explain elliptic curve encryption.
I am not explaining elliptic curve encryption, mostly because I only understood it for about 3 months of my life.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
But no, it's an overly fancy name. Doesn't matter. If I say anything, I'm going to get whatever I say wrong. So I'm going to stop here where I am. So just say, no, Danny, no. But let's private chat. That'll be fun.
Number 6, I want to train my own LLM. That sounds like a terrible idea or an awesome idea. Awesome. So it can answer questions about my data. Where do I begin? Do you need your own LLM for that? I think you just feed it into GPT, right?
Yeah, these days, especially with Gemini coming out, a little ML update here. Context lengths are getting very big. We've talked about it in the past.
Trillions.
So the way LLMs work, you train it very expensively so it learns general knowledge, and then you have it solve specific problems by fitting that problem within its context buffer, within a buffer. We're all programmers. Just jam that problem into a buffer. We're good to go. Buffer has to be big enough so it can generate the solution within the same buffer. That buffer has gotten really big in the last few months. And although I highly endorse training LLMs, truth is to get one of the decent sized LLMs up to a good place, you're going to have to train it for a good week or two on like consumer grade hardware. And it's going to take time. And you're going to do it wrong the first 10 times. And so you're really talking about a few months of work before you get something decent out of it. I truly believe you should go through it. I think it's an excellent exercise, especially for understanding how these stupid things work. But yeah, the commercial ones, it's becoming a much harder argument these days. Gemini is supposed to have 100,000 to a million context length. I just read a new research paper where the performance of large language models has always been quadratic squared, which is the worst. ON squared, bad. But we're looking at linear models now, so ON. So that's when you'll be able to put in the millions and 10 million context lengths, and life will be great.
And I think that, there's tons of samples out there that do exactly what you want. Like the standard model of I have a bunch of documents, I want to shove it into a model and query data over, like that's out there. Like, there's Azure OpenAI samples, there's samples that run on other models. They're all out there, right? I actually think that there's obviously I know more of the Microsoft-y things. I work at Microsoft, but like Azure AI Studio, and like you can literally drag and drop your PDFs and it'll be like, cool, like here's like it just does all the stuff. It'll like do the Azure search indexing for you and do all the stuff. And it just, you point it at it and it just kind of goes. I literally just I have a video coming out where like Aisha from the M365 advocacy team shows how to use like Copilot, not GitHub Copilot, but Microsoft Copilot inside of Teams. And she's like she drags a bunch of files in and she's like, oh, here's this. And then she writes a Teams application that's like, hey, go look at all my contacts over here and like query like records. It was like amazing. It was like awesome. 5 lines of code. It was like mind boggling. All right. Number 7, Gemini had a rough start with image generation. AI is much more complicated than people realize. What are your thoughts? There's 2 questions there, I guess.
My thoughts are the prompts we use are terribly underspecified, and I can't wait until we stop it with these idiotic 100-word prompts. This is not the right way to be using neural networks. So everyone knows the problem with Gemini. They gave equal weighting to all the peoples of the earth. Therefore, when you ask for a generation of a human, you got basically a random sampling of all the peoples of the earth, but by not a random sampling by population, but a random sampling by category. And that made everyone upset. I'm not too upset. The biggest lesson to learn from it is, gosh, the training data certainly does bias these things. And we have to be very careful with that training data. I don't have very strong opinions on whether I care that George Washington was female in this photo. I don't care. It's irrelevant. We all know it's a fake photo. It doesn't matter. Because you could be more specific with your prompt and get exactly what you want. People were giving very general prompts and getting very general results. Garbage in, garbage out. That's my opinion. But it's a good reminder of how much control these companies have in the training and how much companies' biases reflect neural networks themselves. And that's why I will always be in favor of, please, large companies, continue to train very large networks so that we can all use them and benefit from them. But I also strongly believe in the open source world where smaller people are still training networks so that we can have checks and balances against the big ones.
I kind of feel like there's going to be a variety of models because the price point is, for different activities and things that you want to do. That's for sure. All right. Last question from Dan. I guess you only had 8, but is on the Apple Vision Pro. So again, these are just all questions for Frank. Thanks everybody. Making the screen as big as it possibly can be and watching a movie. Do you really feel like you're in a movie theater, or will it never be the same experience? Or will it ever?
It's been a long time since I've been to like a good IMAX. But I would say this rivals any of the like normal theaters you go to these days. Maybe it doesn't rival an IMAX because an IMAX gives you that like peripheral bit where like you see something out of the corner of your eye. But the field of view on this thing is pretty wide. I don't know if anyone's done any measurements on it exactly, but it's wide enough that you actually feel like that large object is large. You can create the post-stab problem where a large object actually feels small, but large objects feel large. And so when you make it room size, it feels like you're looking at a room size projection screen. And so I'd say, yeah, theaters are doomed. Yeah, basically.
I don't know about that. To me, well, there's a few things. One, I do think that there's an advent coming of uh, a small renaissance of physical media. I read some recent reports of how folks are maybe kind of going back to the DVD bins, for example, and we have we've invested in some Blu-rays, for example, and we stop at the video store on occasion, and that's a fun experience actually. Going to a video store, they exist everywhere, right? Even though I go to the Blockbuster, there's video stores in your local neighborhood that you can go. They exist out there, and actually perusing and looking at box art is like kind of fun. There's things that you'll never find
always
online.
love box art.
It's a fun little, you read a little description. It's a lot more fun than doing that. And going through the bins at Walmart or Target or whatever, at some point, the problem with physical media is if they stop selling it, then you can't get it. But there'll always be used stores. You can still find vinyl. You know what I mean?
Vinyl had a comeback, for God's sake.
To me, the essence of going to the theater is like, it's sort of like a mini date night, right? It's an experience, getting the popcorn, getting the brew, getting the cotton, whatever it is, and getting these seats. And to me, it's the audio, right? I think you can get the video pretty good, the audio, but I'm actually curious to ask, to me, it's really not about the video, because I feel like TVs are ginormous and can fill the room. But how is the spatial audio, right? Because for me, when I'm in a Dolby Atmos and it's all around me, I think that's the goal of it, right? And how does that work? And obviously, it's a different experience of going to the movie with friends or a significant other and just watching a movie by yourself, right? So those are two different things at this point in time.
I think the audio is excellent. I apologize, everyone, if I ever sound too much like a fanboy on here, but this is my honest review. I think the audio is excellent. I hate the spatial audio on the iPhone. I think it was on by default, but I bought some AirPods and I would move my head around and the position of the audio would change because like they were trying to position the audio to come from your phone, even though you're wearing headphones. So the orientation of your head would matter. It's spatial audio. They were mapping the source into a 3D space. They do that same trick on the Vision Pro. But in the Vision Pro, it makes sense. It feels like the audio is coming from the movie screen itself. And it feels great. Because like when you turn your head, it kind of feels like a movie theater where like the audio sounds a little bit different. So I really don't like the spatial audio on the phone, but on the Vision Pro, it feels fantastic. And I remember you had an early comment saying you were sad they didn't use the bone conduction or something for the audio. I don't know what technology they're using. Honestly, like the speakers look tiny. They look like the cheap old Walkman ones you used to get as a kid. But they sound fantastic. They sound really good. And they don't go in your ear. They don't cover your ear. They're very comfortable. I don't even notice them. I don't even notice them around my ear. And they sound absolutely fantastic to my hearing. Basses are good. Treble is good. So I have very positive reviews of it. Is it as good as a 9.12 Dolby Atmos? I don't know, but it's pretty dang good for watching 1970s Star Wars.
Well, and it's different, right? Because like the Vision Pro is dedicating audio towards a single person, where the Dolby Atmos experiences are for this huge room that's set up, right? And I used to really be into audio when I used to work at Seton. We had the Seton Q or whatever it was called, and the whole goal of it was wireless 7.1 surround sound, right? So we had a wireless sub, wireless speakers, all these things that were connected into our box that we were building, and that was a pretty cool experience. The problem is I haven't had a surround sound system since I work there, because it's just room and wires and plugs and cables. And unless you're getting it built into the walls and the ceiling, I'm just not a fan. just doesn't look as good. Like, there's a lot of new speakers that are like bookshelf speakers but your room has to be made for it acoustically. So
Yeah.
being able to acoustically shove audio that's spatially aware into you is pretty nice. And obviously you get that when you go to the movie theater. I mean, that being said, movie theaters are expensive, right? Like I had the Regal
Yeah.
pass for a long time because I'd get it on Black Friday and I never really utilized it as much. There is something different, like going to the theater. And then for me, it was always going to the theater like the third or fourth or fifth week because I'd want to go when there's like 2 other people in the theater. Like I'm not a fan anymore of like going to packed theaters in general. But I think the other problem with theaters that I have is like, if the movie starts at 7, I'll just get there at 7:30 because there's about 30 minutes of trailers and you're just like, this is ridiculous. And that's not a great experience. Of course, like I have like Regal points, like I'd always get free popcorn, just not get popcorn at all. But to me, it's like definitely fun to go, especially if there's a movie that Heather will go with me because she's not a big movie fan in the theaters, but I am more so. I love movies and I love the experience. But I guess it gets me out of the house. I think that's what I like about it. I can walk to the theater and gets me out of the house. It gets me doing something. So I think that's a net positive. But it's cool that maybe we're getting closer to that reality of theater without having to build a theater. I think that's the magic part, right? The problem that I don't build a theater in my house is because it looks not great, right? And I don't have a dedicated room. If I had a dedicated room where I'm building a theater, it'd be awesome and be very expensive, but I can go, spend $20 to go to the movies and get that. So if everyone's wearing these things, that might be a cool experience on the road.
It just occurred to me I should do the ultimate test. Dune Part 2 is coming out, I think, this week or next week. And what I could do is watch Part 1 in the Vision Pro and then take it off just as Part 2 comes on at the movie theater.
Yeah.
And then see how it feels. But
I like that.
No, I'm with you. Theaters are all about the experience. Like, yeah. What do we have anymore? We have mini golf, bars, bowling alleys, and movie theaters. So gotta go somewhere and have fun. So
it's true. I'm a big, I would say our local bowling alley, man, it's packed all the time. We try to go one time.
Ours is too.
Like, sorry, no lanes.
Bowling's back, baby.
It's great. Bowling is super fun. Pinball is super fun.
Yeah.
Dart. I mean, like a pool tables.
Pool. Love my pool. Yeah.
We do need more things to go and do that aren't food and drinking, in my opinion. That's what we're really missing out on.
I disagree. I think everything needs food and drinking.
Oh, I mean, no, it's included. The
library needs a bar.
It's included. It's included, Frank. Don't you worry. It's in there. But I'm saying that give me other funds to do while I'm eating and drinking. Because you don't just go to the bowling alley to bowl, Frank. You go to get $5 pitchers of Coors Light and pizza, in quotes, pizza.
And as a kid to play in the arcade, but yeah.
You know what's really fun? Pickleball. Big pickleballer. I've only watched it.
You are such paddles. A hipster, James.
Pickleball.
Sometimes hipsterness even catches me off guard.
It's cool. It's so cool. Pickleball. I mean, I actually haven't played it yet. I only own the paddles because we got a TJ Maxx, but the Tommy Bahamas. We went to the pickleball place and we watched the Pickle Pros, which is it's like people between the age of 6 and 98. And everyone's pickling. But
who beat the 98-year-old? Okay.
No, the 98-year-old just destroyed it. But here's the thing: every court sold out. It's just completely packed. There's not enough stuff to go do nowadays. I need more stuff to do.
Are they using like the tennis courts? Have they taken over other people's courts yet? That'd be
mean. They could convert.
No, James. I only play pickleball in Vision OS. That's the only place.
And on that note, that's going to do it for this episode. Frank would stop talking about Vision OS. Nobody cares, Frank. That's going to do it for this week. Yeah, thanks for being with us for 400 episodes. We fully support and maintain this podcast with your support over at patreon.com/emergeconflictfm. And if you are over on the good old YouTubes, if you want to support the channel, you can just go and open up a browser with every single video and just let it play. And what that will do is drive our view hours, and that will help us get to monetization. That's a nice YouTube hack for you.
We're going to get thrown off now.
No, don't do that. I'm just joking. Just go binge them, but slowly, one at a time. You put them all, they're all in a playlist. Just go and say autoplay and just listen to all of them, even if you've already listened to all 400 episodes. They're all there. I guess not all of them are on there, but the back catalog. Go listen to the back catalog. It helps us out. We're close to monetization, and by close, I mean not close at all. Halfway there. And then, of course, you can support the pod by sharing with a friend, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or other podcast platforms that have reviews. I don't know if they exist, but they might be out there. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can follow the YouTube. You can do other things you could do. Frank, what else could you do?
Well, we used to have a Discord, but we don't honestly hang out there too much. But we do check it from time to time. So if you want to join the Discord and post something, within a few months we'll see it. I promise.
All right. That's going to do it for episode 400 of Merge Conflict. So until next time, I'm James Montemagno.
And I'm Frank Kruger. Thanks for watching and listening all 400 times.
Peace.